was struck by this comment that talking about music is like dancing to architecture. And I've noticed just how amazing y'all have an ability to find these nuances within music, what it means beyond just the sounds that you hear, but it's all grounded back in those sounds. And that's really the genesis of my discussion today. I'm looking at the topic of Southern Gothic in the Allman Brothers Band story, ways to sort of understand this story in bigger ways. I'll start by saying that the Crossroads carries a tremendous amount of symbolism in the American South. Its origins are in the tales that enslaved Africans carried with them to America. Crossroads was a sacred space where West African gods were invoked. This is symbolized as choices, communication with the spirit world, and the meeting of fate and free will. In America, these African traditions merged with Christianity. The African gods became the ultimate trickster, Satan. It's at the Crossroads where Robert Johnson allegedly sold his soul to the devil, a legend that reverberates in popular imagination today, well beyond blues music and roots music. The Allman Brothers Band stand firmly at this intersection of Southern music, history, and culture. They are the Southern counterculture merged with the Southern Gothic tradition. Their story is one of resilience, cultural, economic, emotional, spiritual, and existential. The band is a microcosm of the South, its contradictions, its struggles, and its beauty. They found salvation in its music and spread that music with a religious fervor. They're the examples of musician Patterson Hood's duality of the Southern thing, a phrase Patterson coined for the Drive-By Truckers' 2001 album, Southern Rock Opera. Now, that record examined the same themes I'm looking at today, but it uses a strictly Alabama lens. Specifically, actually, Lynyrd Skynyrd, a Ronnie Van Zant of Lynyrd Skynyrd, which is a parallel band in this era with the Allman Brothers Band, another Southern rock band. The duality of the Southern thing frames something I've long pondered about my beloved South. And for y'all's benefit, I'm in Nashville and have lived in the American South my entire life. How can this region that has given the world such beauty and cooperation with its music and its arts be so accepting of the long tail and rot of white supremacy? Emerging from Macon, Georgia in 1969, and the years immediately following the 1964 Civil Rights and the 1965 Voting Rights Acts, the Allman Brothers Band were an integrated band that clashed with the expectations of Southern society. Their songs addressed religious themes in a secular sense. One of their earliest songs, Greg Allman's first song he brought to the band, is called It's Not My Cross to Bear. In the song Stormy Monday, made most famous by Bobby Blue Bland, but it's a T-Bone Walker song, expresses a week in the life of the protagonist, saying, Sunday I go to church, I kneel down to pray and say, Lord, have mercy. This is exactly what Robert Johnson did at the Crossroads in his famous song, Crossroads. The Allman Brothers Band songs, their lyrics evoke pain and existential crisis. In the song Dreams, also one of Greg Allman's first songs, he wrote it about 21 years old. Greg went up on the hilltop to see what I could see. The whole world was falling right down in front of me. And one of their most famous tracks is the song Whipping Post. And it's a 22-minute blues jam where you can feel the pain and torture that Greg is expressing in the lyrics and in the mindset. They're the ultimate torture that any Southerner knows, black and white, though this was obviously a torture reserved for African Americans and enslaved individuals. In addition to blues and rhythm and blues, their music carried inspiration from Miles Davis and John Coltrane, among others. I heard earlier Dr. Flynn talking a little bit about waltz tempo. The Allman Brothers used 6/8 time on their song Dreams, Greg's song Dreams, that they borrowed directly from the song All Blues by Miles Davis on Kinda Blue. John Coltrane's on it as well. J-Mo, one of their drummers, called Dreams My Favorite Things with Words. That song was one of John Coltrane's most famous vehicles, and the band actually tried to record My Favorite Things late on in their tenure. But what I want to talk about today really is this Southern Gothic element. I want to talk further about the Southern Gothic element of this story. I want to first talk a little bit about the differences between Gothic, Southern Gothic, or at least lay that out. And for me, those of y'all in Europe, this may be something that, European academicians, may be something really core to what you know. It's not core to me. I understood Southern Gothic in my mind, but it's been so long since I did anything with Gothic literature to kind of understand the parallels. I knew they were there. It was like one of those, I know it when I see it. And that's really what I unpacked today for this lecture. The Southern Gothic is rooted in the humid, haunting Spanish moss-draped landscapes of the American South. Southern Gothic evolved from the 18th and 19th century European Gothic traditions and out of the American Gothic writings of folks like Edgar Allan Poe. Instead of castles, the setting is the South. It's crumbling plantation society grappling with the specters of slavery, the Civil War, and the lost cause. The grotesque is reflected in a culture wrestling with the ghosts of the present. Southern Gothic confronts the South's romanticized past with the harsh realities of its unresolved conflicts. It balances darkness with redemption. It doesn't shy away from the complexities of human experience. Instead, embraces them to create stories that both critique and celebrate Southern identity. For the Allman Brothers Band, these themes are not abstract. They define their story as they navigated Southern and American society in the post-civil rights era. I put these images up here. This is also a version of Dr. Flynn's intermediality, a term I had to actually look up while we were talking to make sure I fully understood it. These are visual images of the band. I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but these are visual images that are steeped in this Southern Gothic imagery that I'm going to be talking about. Duane founded the band in March 1969 and actually in Jacksonville, Florida. He was fresh off a star turn on Wilson Pickett's Hey Jude, and built a band with 5 fellow Southerners playing a unique form of rock music. Eventually it's called Southern rock, but at this time it doesn't have that name. And their Southernness is essential to the story. Death and loss hover like a cloud throughout. Duane and Greg, that's Duane there standing second from the right, Greg all the way to the left, both lost their father. He was a D-Day veteran and killed in a botched robbery attempt a few years, actually they were 2 and 3 years old. J-Mo also lost his father as a youth. And twin tragedies define the story. The deaths of Duane Allman and Barry Oakley in 1971 and 1972. Now the themes of Southern Gothic, terrible transition, strike that. The Allman Brothers Band grappled with the same themes as Southern Gothic protagonists. And I laid these out here. Y'all can read them. Decay and ruin, memory, the haunting past. I had to lay these out for myself a bit to understand all of these various elements in Southern Gothic tradition that fit into the Allman Brothers Band story. Each of these is addressed through music, through songs, through philosophy, certainly through their album output, and very much through their visual image. These themes are apparent throughout. Now, redemption was their goal, which is always part of the protagonist narrative, of course, and part of the Gothic tradition as well, redemption. Duane described their mission as a band as Hittin the Note, and that was the title of my paper proposal, Spiritual Transcendence Through Music. Their music blended past and future, integrating blues, jazz, country and western, string music, folk music traditions, even strains of classical music. The band challenged norms with an interracial lineup in a South still struggling to fully integrate. Like their forebears, the band transcended Southern cultural and religious mores. Songs bring joy, sorrow, reflection, honoring both the musicians and the culture they came from. For the Allman Brothers Band and their audience, music was an outlet for release and self-expression, needing no wealth, power, or privilege. It was contemporary American music built on Southern musical traditions, an improvisation-heavy attack that favored the ultimate musical melting pot, American musical melting pot, jazz. Duane said, these 6 guys have always worked for one sound, one direction, but everyone plays like he wants to play. He just keeps that goal in mind. If you know what you do and you're satisfied in your heart that you're doing it, you ain't going to have no problems. They sought deeper connection with each other and with audiences. As Butch Trucks said, that's drummer Butch Trucks in the foreground here, we're up there playing for ourselves first and foremost. I'm not getting myself off. How can I expect anyone else to get off on it? I start with myself, then move to the guys in the band, and then we start communicating. We kick it into overdrive and go into places we can't go by ourselves. I chose this picture on purpose, by the way, because it shows 5 of the 6 guys looking closely at the soloist right now. The only person who's not is JMO, who's the drummer between the two, the black man. JMO, as I said in my book, in the caption, JMO's meditating over his drums, which is something that he does very regularly. This phrase really does emphasize the term. I'm sorry, this photograph represented to me this concept that they came up with, which was hitting the note. Hitting the note was Barry Oakley's phrase. What Dickie Betts, he's the soloist here, the one who wrote Jessica, the song I played you earlier, called getting down past all the bullshit, all the put on, all the acting that goes along with just being human, getting right down to the roots, the source, the truth of music, letting it happen, letting that feeling come out. Barry Oakley said hitting the note is hitting your peak, the place where we all like to be at, you know, when you're really feeling at your best, that's what you describe as your note, when you're really able to put all of you into it and get that much of it. There's some special places we play, and every time we go back, the vibes are there, and it ends up happening again. We'll be up playing for 3 or 4 hours, and when we finish, I'll be so high I can hardly talk. When you start hitting like that, the communication between members of the band gets wide open. Stuff just starts coming out everywhere. To JMO, hitting the note was times when I was so at peace with what I was playing that my spirit left my body right on stage. To audiences, the Allman Brothers Band was, and this is a quote, a physical and spiritual experience. 6 guys playing as a giant organism. Now, I mentioned earlier the intermediality piece that Dr. Flynn mentioned, and I had thrown this in there already to show a little bit about the Southern Gothic themes that the band had and its visual imagery. The photo on the left is the same site as the band's first album cover. This is actually the 1855 home of a prominent cotton plantation owner. It was in a state of disrepair in 1969 when they took the photographs. The image in the upper right here is the back cover of the first album, and that's from Rose Hill Cemetery in Macon. Barry Oakley is actually standing in an alcove of a mausoleum for Joseph Bond, who at one point was one of the largest slaveholders in the United States. The photos were taken in summer 1969 as the band was preparing its first album. They look like outlaws from a different time, a band of warriors ready to take on the world, which is true. The Allman Brothers Band was on what became 2+ years of relentless touring, spending more than 300 days a year on the road. In March 1971, they recorded their masterpiece at Fillmore East over 4 shows in New York City. Released July 6th, the album hit gold by October 25th, which was a remarkable achievement for a band that had barely sold 150,000 units in their first 2 records. 4 days after receiving the news that the record was a breakthrough smash, their leader, Duane Allman, was dead in a motorcycle crash. He was 3 weeks shy of his 25th birthday. Duane's devastated bandmates honored him with an enduring commitment to his vision. On November 1, they played his memorial service. Then they embarked on a 90-show tour as a quintet. The band channeled their grief into music. As Butch Trucks said, we were playing for our lives, trying to make sense of it all. The band found healing in music, but it was only temporary relief. Their leader's absence had a profound effect on the band. Barry Oakley, most distraught. Duane's death destroyed him, said Greg. Barry Oakley's life ended with my brother's life. Never have I seen a man collapse like that. Oakley blunted his pain in a haze of drug and alcohol and died in a motorcycle crash November 11, 1972. It was a year and 2 weeks after Duane's death and a stone's throw from the site. Since 1972, the bandmates have been buried beside each other in Rose Hill Cemetery. That's a photo I took on the lower left in 1997. The plot has now grown to include 4 of the 6 original members. That's upper left-hand corner. Rose Hill Cemetery, which is pictured a little more here on the right, with its terraced tombstones and moss-draped trees, grounds the Allman Brothers Band's story in these Southern Gothic themes of decay, memory, and beauty. Established in 1840 along the Ocmulgee River, the cemetery is famous for a classical revival garden layout, but its beauty belies its past. The 50-acre site is the final resting place for generations of slaveholding Maconites and their descendants, including 10 acres set aside for enslaved people. Rose Hill is also a favored hangout for the band in their early days, a place where they roamed, reflected, and found inspiration, most notably Dickie Betts' famous instrumental In Memory of Elizabeth Reed. Betts named the song for Elizabeth Jones Reed Napier, the widow of a Confederate officer. Her tomb, that's her tomb here well, it's both of these, but on the right, you can see more what the gravesite looks like. His tomb was a rendezvous spot with Boz Scaggs' wife, Carmela, a torrid affair that inspired the song, its haunting minor key melody carrying feelings of wistful longing. In Memory of Elizabeth Reed is an indelible part of the Allman Brothers Band's mythology, a link between the beauty, tragedy, and complexity of Southern history and the transcendent power of their music. And then in a striking coincidence, Elizabeth Reed died in 1935, just steps from the big house at 2321 Vineville Avenue in Macon. It was the Allman Brothers Band's communal home 35 years later and is now an Allman Brothers Band museum. Further connecting the dots, that house, the big house, sits on land that originally belonged to Reed's grandfather-in-law. That would be her husband's grandfather, who was once who was infamous as the largest individual investor in Confederate bonds in 1861. I'm not trying to hammer this point home, except to say repeatedly, these intersections of this genteel Southern society and this rebel band of rock and rollers, you just can't unlink them. And it's true about the American South as well. You also can't unlink the legacies of slavery and segregation. These things are super tied together and they never go away. And the more I dig into them, the more I end up finding. Now, the band itself represented a push against this moral complexity and cultural tension. As an interracial band in the South, they directly challenged white supremacist norms. Their integrated lineup, playing unabashedly Black-influenced music, was a bold statement of inclusion and creativity rather than continuation of division. And in an era fraught with danger for long hairs, the group made its name touring. And touring for the Southern counterculture was an intense experience. As contemporary Bruce Hampton said, it was life or death. You'd stop at a gas station and you'd wonder if you were going to die. That's no joke. If you had long hair, you were a target. Traveling with a Black drummer added to the volatility. And though J-Mo's never spoken of the indignities he experienced, his bandmates have. We were always a little on guard for someone to mess with him, Rhodey Red Dog said. We got messed with a lot. Betts recounted his reaction to the harassment. I was horrified at that kind of thing. Further, with a psychedelic mushroom as their logo, the Allman Brothers Band distanced themselves even more from polite Southern society, aligning themselves with the Southern counterculture. Now, redemption is found in public performance. I picked every one of these photos to show these are early days of the Allman Brothers Band, all 1969. Macon's on the bottom and Atlanta is on the top. But to show how important the communal ritual of playing music was for the band. Now, these are all long hairs throughout the South gathering to watch this band as well. If you look closely in the lower left, you will see a group of what looks like African-American kids in the audience, which is somewhat uncommon still in this era. For the band and its fans, an Allman Brothers concert was more than entertainment. It was a ritualistic performance. They were spiritual revivals. Fans didn't hear the music. They felt it. As Miller Francis Jr. wrote, quote, "You don't listen to the Allman Brothers, you feel it, hear it, move with it, absorb it." And the band's improvisation made it a once-in-a-lifetime event. As Dickie said, we were just trying to make the audience be consumed by what we're doing. And if we can make that magical kind of music happen. They don't know what's happening exactly, except they know that we're really focused on what we're doing and it sounds good and the energy is good. What they will do is forget about this and forget about that and have fun. Just simply have fun for 2 or 3 hours. The audience wasn't passive. They were and remained a part of the music itself. This communal redemption is one of the band's greatest legacies. The album on the right, At Fillmore East, secured Duane Allman's legacy. And although his greatest legacy is the groundbreaking band he formed in 1969, the band that outlived him for 43 years. The album's success and continued influence, and Duane's sudden tragic death at the height of his success he'd long fought for, is the Southern Gothic tradition merged with the Southern counterculture. Through their music, the band turned loss into beauty in creating a legacy that transcends time and place. They are a product of the South and a critique of it, embodying the region's dualities while offering a vision of hope and unity. As Patterson Hood would say, such is the duality of the Southern thing. The Allman Brothers Band Duane's band fused multiple elements of Southern music into this singular cohesive sound. The music was rooted in Southern traditions, but transcended regional boundaries to resonate worldwide. Racially integrated, they followed an uncompromising musical path for 45 years, all but 2 of them without their founder. The Allman Brothers Band offered transcendence and healing, musical salvation. Duane Allman brought the counterculture to the South. His is a story of his pursuit of musical excellence. I'm going to say that again. His is a story of his pursuit of musical excellence, of Hittin the Note. I'm going to end right there. I want to let y'all know, here's some contact information for me. And upper right-hand corner, that's yours truly in Greencastle, Ireland. And behind me, I believe, is Northern Ireland. And I just want to connect something very quickly. My wife's grandfather is from Greencastle. My grandfather is from Belfast. Standing there was one of those moments. I'm a place-based historian. I have been to both of the places before, but this was last January. My hope was to join y'all in person. Can't resist the opportunity to go back to the homeland, the motherland, but it was not in the cards this year. So I'm really glad Chris joined me virtually and we could do this. But that's my contact information. I'm a historian of Southern culture. I'm an independent historian. I have my own consulting firm, work with museums and historical societies. I'd like to say this is a side hustle, but it's a hustle. Presenting and talking about the digital history of the Allman Brothers Band and really expanding the story well beyond just music they played and the dates they played it and the albums, but looking deeper into what this music means to culture and to people throughout the world. So, however, it was a bit of an inadvertent reaction, right? So the story of American rock and roll out in this era, right, when the British invasion happens, is American rock is basically dead. The only band that's doing anything is the Beach Boys. The producers have taken over and they're pushing all this schlock down everybody's throat, you know, from Pat Boone, not in this era, forward, right? And then y'all come over, your people come over, and basically, as Duane said, reintroduce the blues to the American people. So what the British invasion did, Tom Petty says, they all said when the Beatles played Ed Sullivan in February 1964, everybody went out and got guitars and started bands. Now, Duane and Greg were already doing it, but that was the model they followed. And the Fabs were part of their repertoire from the beginning. Greg Allman, by the way, has a tremendous version of Rain, if you can seek that out. You know, the non-album cut from the Revolver period. And then, of course, you got Duane Allman doing Hey Jude. He's the one who told Wilson Pickett and Rick Hall to record that track. So absolutely. I mean, look, y'all, without the Brits, America is something different too, completely, right? You know, and without y'all coming back and telling us what music was about, y'all being